Let's talk about something that can either be a project's best friend or its worst nightmare: the schedule. Forget those intimidating, complex charts for a minute. We're going to dive into how a good schedule is actually a powerful tool that can take a project from total chaos to perfect control.
You know the feeling, right? We've all been there. You start a project, everyone's excited, everything's on track, and then somehow things start to slip. Deadlines get missed, people get frustrated, and you're left wondering, why does this happen over and over again?
Well, here's the secret. You have to stop thinking of a schedule as just a list of dates on a calendar. A great schedule is so much more. It's a detailed plan, a roadmap that guides the whole team. It's also a vital communication tool that makes sure everyone, from the team to the stakeholders, is on the same page.
So, how do we actually build this incredible roadmap? Well, that brings us to our first section: laying the groundwork. You wouldn't build a house by just throwing up some walls, right? Of course not. You need a solid foundation first. And it's the exact same idea when you're building a reliable schedule.
That foundation really comes down to two key steps. First, you set the rules of the game by creating what's called a schedule management plan. Then, you get down to the nitty-gritty. You figure out every single action that needs to happen to get the project done. You break that big picture down into a detailed to-do list.
The main technique we use for this is called decomposition. Now, I know it sounds super technical, but trust me, it's something you and I do all the time without even thinking about it. Let's say you're planning a community charity event. Host a successful event is the huge goal. Decomposition is just the simple process of breaking that giant goal down into all the little tasks you need to do to pull it off.
And here's a perfect example. The big task, secure venue, isn't something you can just do in one go. It's actually made up of a bunch of smaller, much more manageable activities. You've got to research places, call the managers, get some quotes, and then finally sign the contract. See? When you break it down like this, you get a way more realistic view of what actually needs to be done.
Okay, so now we have our list of all these little activities. That's great. But a list isn't a plan, not yet. In our next section, Connecting the Dots, we're going to turn that simple list into a logical flow of work.
The tool we use for this has another one of those fancy names: the precedence diagramming method, or PDM for short. All it really is a way to link your tasks together to show how they depend on each other. Think of it like you're creating the project's own flowchart. You're just defining the most efficient order to get everything done.
Now, there are a few ways to connect these dots. The one you'll see most often is called finish to start. It's just simple logic, right? You can't start selling tickets for your charity event until you've actually finished booking the venue. Makes sense. But there are other types too, like start to start or finish to finish, that let you do some activities at the same time, which can save a ton of time.
All right, we know the order of our tasks, but how long is each one going to take? Well, there are a couple of ways to figure this out. You could do what's called analogous estimating, which is basically a quick and dirty guess. You just look at a similar project you did in the past and use its timing. It's fast, but not always super accurate. For more precision, you can use parametric estimating, which uses data and stats, like cost per square foot, to get a much better calculation.
But, things don't always go according to plan. So to deal with that uncertainty, there's this fantastic technique called three-point estimating. Instead of just one guess, you come up with three. What's the best case scenario, the worst case, and what's most likely to happen? By looking at that range, you end up with a much more realistic and easier to defend estimate for how long a task will actually take.
So, let's recap. We have our tasks, we know their sequence, and we have a good idea of how long they'll take. And now for the magic. In this next section, we are going to find the critical path. This is the moment we uncover the real, unchangeable timeline of our entire project.
The critical path is basically the longest chain of connected tasks in your project from start to finish. And here's the crazy part. Because it's the longest path, it actually tells you the absolute shortest amount of time your project can possibly be completed in. Every single project has one. And that brings us to a super important idea called float. Just think of float as wiggle room or schedule flexibility. It's the amount of time a task can be delayed without messing up the project's final deadline. But, and this is a big but, the tasks on that critical path have zero float, no wiggle room at all. Any delay to one of those tasks will directly delay the entire project. This right here, this is what it all boils down to. When you see that an activity has 0 days of float, you know you found it. It's on the critical path. That's your signal. As a project manager, as a team member, this is where you have to focus all your attention to keep things moving.
But listen, a schedule isn't something you make once and then frame on the wall. It's a living, breathing document. So in our final section, Staying on Course, we're going to look at how we actually keep an eye on the schedule and control it, especially when the world is changing so fast. There are really two main ways of thinking about this. The traditional, or predictive way, is to create this super detailed plan upfront and then try your best to stick to it, controlling any changes. But the more modern, adaptive approach, what people often call agile, actually welcomes change. The plan evolves in these short cycles, which lets the team react and respond to new information as it comes in.
So instead of having this massive long-term schedule, adaptive teams usually work from something called a backlog. You can just think of it as a prioritized to-do list for the whole project. They pull work from the top of the list in short bursts, which lets them stay incredibly flexible and deliver valuable stuff to their customers bit by bit. The whole approach is built to adapt.
So if they don't have a giant schedule, how do they track their progress? Well, they use cool tools like this iteration burndown chart. It's a really simple graph that shows how much work is left versus how much time is left. The team can see in a single glance if they're on track to hit their goal for that cycle, and if not, they can make changes right away.
And all of this brings us right back to the main point. At its heart, a schedule is not just a bunch of deadlines. It is a fundamental tool for communication, for managing what everyone expects, and for reporting on how things are going. It's the one thing that gets the entire team aligned and moving in the same direction.
So I'll leave you with this one question to think about for your own work. Do you treat your schedule like a rigid, scary deadline, or do you see it as a flexible guide that's helping your team deliver real, meaningful value? The way you answer that can make all the difference.